Synth Network.
Good evening, good afternoon, good morning even if you're watching us either on catch up. Hi, why aren't you here live? Wherever you might be, welcome to episode 71 of the Pro Synth Network show. We're churning through these at a rapid pace. We have got a brilliant guest for you tonight, and we'll also be talking about some of the scant news topics of the week in terms of music technology. But before we get to our very special guest, I want to bring in, I'm going to try things differently this week. I'm going to bring in our co-hosts one by one. So first of all, let's go to the very hot and the very fiery California and just hope that Cryss is all right over there. How are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. I'm down Southern California, but up north they've got a lot going on right now.
Yeah, so you're well out of the way then, yeah?
Yeah.
Good. And how's your week been?
Oh, very busy, very busy. But I got out to go see my friends play a concert, so that was Excellent. A lot of fun, and got to reunite with some old friends. And all of the 71 episodes that we've been doing, I've got a couple of friends that are musicians that are local, and say, "Hey, we got so and so on the show. Hey, we got so and so on the show," and they're like, "Oh yeah." And we've had some amazing guests, and I'm like, "What?" Finally, I texted him yesterday. I said, "Hey, we have Mark Reeder on the show." Like, really? Wow!
Well,
so
there you
go. Mark, you're the one that did it.
Well, we'll come to Mark in just a moment, but we're going to go to somewhere kind of near Mark's hometown, up in Warrington. Mr. Ben Simpson, are you suitably busy at the moment with gigging again?
Well, yeah. We are gigging, but I had a slight setback with Vicky, my partner, getting the dreaded vid. So
the dreaded vid.
So I've robbed that from Kevin Hart. But so we're both isolating at the minute, but should be all right for the future gigs, hopefully, providing I don't get it myself.
Well, indeed. Well, send Vicky our best. Yeah. So I hope she's feeling better soon. Thank you. And let's bring in our very special guest. I've known Mark for some while now, and he's been a bit of a hero of mine musically, but he's an awfully nice chap as well. From Manchester originally, but now a long time resident of the city of Berlin, where he's had such a massive impact. Let's welcome Mr. Mark Reeder to the show. Welcome. How are you?
Thank you. Very well, thank you.
Good.
Healthy.
Excellent. That's all you can really ask nowadays, isn't it? So we're going to come to you a little bit later on and talk about your career and everything that you've been doing over the years, and your kind of history in Berlin and the way that's been documented in the superb film B-Movie. Are you busy at the moment? Any good things going on?
Very busy. Yeah, very busy. Got lots of things going on.
Excellent.
Not enough, but not too many. I mean, luckily they're panning out the year, so that's fine.
Fantastic.
I'll
Good
tell
stuff.
you about that in a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll come to all of that. And of course, we must say hello to everybody that's in the chat room. Welcome to you all. I used to go through all of your names, but there's far too many of you to go through. So welcome one and all. You're all incredibly welcome. And thank you again for coming along and supporting the show. If you want to join us outside of the show, which you're more than welcome to do at any time, most of you probably are fully aware of our presence on Facebook, because that's kind of where we started everything. But of course, you can also subscribe to us on Instagram and Twitter, and of course YouTube. Please do hit that like button right now underneath the video. Do it, and then subscribe, and then hit the little bell to get the notifications if you want to be notified. But the subscriptions and the likes, unfortunately, they're the currency of this day and age. So please please do hit those as much as you can. And if you need to get in touch with us outside of the show times, you can do that through the email address right there. Finally, here comes my little cap in hand approach. If you want to help keep us on the air, and you guys have done a brilliant job so far, we're 71 episodes in, and I think we're going to be here. I think I said the other day we're kind of on track to be here at least until the end of 2022, which is pretty good. So if you want to keep that thing going, then please do. The clickable link is in the description underneath the video, but there it is on the screen as well. There you go, right there. And if you want to donate, please do as little or as much as you feel we are worth, and hopefully we're worth more than anything. What's he pointing at over there? Oh, that's it. You're that way. You've got to do it the opposite way. So when I point at Cryss, I go there. You see. We're like, what's that TV show? What was it? The I can't remember, the American show with all the family in the squares. What was that? Yeah, it's gone.
Yeah, from like a long time ago.
Yeah, from when.
I'm on mute.
Yeah. You're on mute.
Yeah, I was shouting the answers and everything. I was on mute.
No, you're useless. You and technology, eh? Anyway, so there we go. That's the donations. If you want to do that, that's very nice of you indeed. Right. Again, we've kind of been slightly bereft of news, as is the kind of, as it is with this time of year. There's not huge amounts of stuff coming out. I guess they're all kind of waiting. We've got Super Booth in Berlin coming up in, when is that? Beginning of October, I think, isn't it?
Yeah,
so hopefully we'll see some stuff in the next few weeks, some teasers maybe coming out, so we can discuss those. But there have been a few bits, so we'll just kind of go through these casually and see which ones stick. So first of all, we've got this from the people at Propellerhead. They're not Propellerhead anymore. They're called Reason Studios, aren't they? This is Mimic, the creative sampler. They've been threatening this for a little while. Reason's had a couple of decent samplers in its package, NN19 and NNXT, which were pretty good. But this one kind of takes it to another level, and it includes a bit of granular in there, even though they have a granular sampler already. And it's a very nice little tool and device. I was going to play this video here by Ryan, but it kind of goes on a bit.
I wanted to start today talking about sampling and the Mimic Creative Sampler by admitting something that might sound like I'm about to discredit everything else I'm about to say, but stick with me here because I'm going to admit this on behalf of anyone else out there like me watching. I don't use samples in my music making. I don't use them. I mean, sure, sometimes I'll toss one in there, but I don't use samples the way that people who use samples think of using samples. I don't crate dig. I don't flip them. I don't juggle them. I don't twist and warp samples into inspiring new songs. So why am I sitting here telling you about sampling? Because in the last month, I've started using samples, and it's all thanks to...
I think it's just kind of, it goes on and on and on, but basically this is a new sampler from the team at Reason Studios, and let me just bring this kind of up slightly bigger on screen so we can see this. So with this sampler, you can just do kind of regular pitch-based sampling. You can do multi-pitch, multi-slot for things like drums. You can slice it up like you can with any of the kind of the slicing tools, particularly Recycle, which obviously Propellerhead / Reason Studios were very famous for. And lots of ways to manipulate your samples, stretch them. There's granular stretching and all sorts of things going on in there. There's filters, LFOs, and effects and all stuff. It looks I was having a little play with it earlier, and it looks like a lot of fun. And of course, now you can zoom in, you can make things bigger on the screen with Reason. That's something that's been introduced with the newer versions. Let's go to, who should we go to first? I'm going to ask Mark. Are you a big sampler, or are you all about synths, or what? Is sampling something that's big in your world?
Well, I sample some stuff, of course, but it's not like, it's always about sampling myself more than anything else. And,
sure.
and I've never actually used Reason, so I don't really know it. Really.
Okay.
But back in the early days when sampling was like 2 seconds or something.
Yeah.
We had like one of Roland's or an Ensoniq, on Akai 900.
Yeah.
We used those in the back those days, and that was quite interesting. because back then there wasn't kind of like the issues that there were with samples these days. But I find that certain things you sample, but I nearly make my own things which I sample myself. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you mess around with granular at all? Because that's quite a cool thing these days.
Well, it depends. It depends on what it is.
Yeah.
If I need, I sometimes need to. I try that, but I prefer to, like work it out first and then kind of like put it together and then put the samples together and to create a sound.
Right.
Gotcha. I'm not really kind of like taking a sample from somewhere and put it in my song.
Fine.
I don't do that.
So you're using it more to create new sounds than you are to mimic old. Yeah.
I'll play different synthesizers and put them all together, or sounds, or I'll go and then sample it, and then I use that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like the old Star Wars kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's probably one of the most fun ways. I wish more people did that. Nowadays sampling just seems to be the domain of huge sample library manufacturers, and not many people are. I say I'll probably get shot down in flames because people in the chat room will say, "Oh, they do it and these do it," but not many people use creative sampling as much as they certainly used to back in the day, and I admire that. Ben, you're not a I mean, I'm the only person here that uses Reason, and I'm not using it as much as I used to. But
I used to use it.
Yeah. Does this thing appeal to you in any way?
I've got loads of samplers, but a software one, there's not really one that I'm comfortable with. So maybe if I spent time with this one, it could be that. It does look pretty easy to use from what I've seen in the videos and stuff. I've got like Hallion and I've got another one, but I can't remember. Well, I've got Omnisphere.
Oh right, yeah.
So you can import samples into both of them, and I've got like hardware samplers. I've got the EMU and the Akai and the V-Synth. The V-Synth does sampling, so I'm kind of like, if I'm gonna. I've probably got too many as it is, because if you're going to sample something, you're just going to stick with the one that you're comfortable working with, aren't you? Really?
Yeah.
I don't think. Well, I'm not anyway. I'm not the kind of person that says, "Oh, I prefer the converters on the Akai to the EMU." I don't really notice things that much. I can tell. I do prefer the sound of the EMU for like sampling synths and stuff, and the Akai for doing drums and things.
Okay.
I think that they work well like that, but as for like converters and stuff, so a software, what I'm trying to say in a long-winded way is a software sampler would be fine for me, providing that it had the right interface, and I've never really found one that I like the Akai interface. I really think that that's a great way of working with samples. And the software ones are just, I don't know.
Maybe if it's somebody who's starting out, and they're looking for something, like, it's probably good for them. You know what I mean? It's might not be for us specifically, but for someone who's starting out, it's probably really good too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sampling is one of those things that really benefits from a visual interface. I've sampled on things with little 2-line LED displays, and you're having to dial in these digits, and it's just a pain. But then when Akai came out with the S6000, the big screen, that was a joy. And then, of course, you started getting more computer-based sample programs that technically weren't samplers. They were just sample playback things like Contact. And this, you can't sample into this. You just create an audio file or pinch an audio file and drop it in and then mess around with it. Half the fun back in the day was plugging something in and trying to capture that sample, or taking a tape recorder out and recording stuff and then bringing it back and feeding it in. But I'm just an old fart, but I do like the graphic kind of interface of this particularly. This is really useful. Ben, we've done Ben. Cryss, what are your thoughts, sir?
Yeah, it looks nice. I don't use Reason, but to look at some of the market-wide kind of usages of these things, one thing that is nice is that samplers are like embedded into a lot of different programs, including DAWs and other kind of workstation software synths like Omnisphere. So I was looking at Falcon today because it's on sale. I'm not going to buy it. I just don't need it, and I don't need to spend that money on it. But I was just thinking about like what is the software like? Oh, I've got so many things that do sampling already, and the thing that makes it nice for me is because for years and years I just would never touch it. If it was a sample instrument that I would play and record on a song, then I would use it. But as far as sampling, that's a little, actually doing some sampling, that's something that's a little bit more new to me. But one thing that has really impressed me is that in the last few years, as technology increases and we have the sort of artificial intelligence that's being implemented in these sampling devices, the time that it takes to do some of these things. So for somebody like me that was, playing guitar in the, the early 90s or whatever, and wasn't using an Akai sampler, like I don't have the nostalgia for all that whole process. So I want to get it done quickly. I want to here, I'm more interested in the product of it than the process of it. So these new samplers really go a long way to making sampling something that I can involve in my already complicated workflow. So yeah, it's interesting to see, and it's nice to see that Reason Studio, because this is all part of Reason Studio's new version of Reason 12. And if you subscribe to their Reason Plus package, then you're getting all of these features early, because you can't buy Reason 12. You have to subscribe and then get these features as and when they're rolled out. And then once it's kind of officially launched, which I believe is September, the full program, you'll be able to either buy it as a standalone or subscribe. But subscribers are getting it early at the moment. So it's kind of fun to play around with these things. But it's an interesting addition to an already big selection of instruments that you get with that package. And of course now you can use it in another DAW because of the Reason Rack plugin.
Yeah, it sparked a conversation off in the chat about like hardware samplers, and it reminded me that I started out with the S330, the Roland one, and that was like amazing because you could hook it up to a monitor. So instead of having that little tiny screen on the front, you could, and it was the graphics were like bong. It was like really, really basic. It makes the CX-5 look advanced, I reckon. It was great though. It felt like you were, I don't know, on
you're halfway to a Fairlight.
This revolution. You were there at the forefront.
The screen was like that big, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You felt like you were buying a Fairlight from Aldi.
Yeah. So. Yeah, what's your personal favourite hardware sampler that you've used, Rob? Because I know you've got quite a few. Like user interface and sound quality and that. I know you're gonna feel obliged to say the Fairlight.
It's like picking one of your favourite children. No, I don't. Do you know the Fairlight is a pig. Compared to nowadays, it's a real pig. It's amusing. It's in an archaic way, like your grandfather can be amusing sometimes. It's kind of like that. My favourite sampler has to be the S6000, hands down every time, because it combines. You can use it as a standalone. If you use it as with the software as well, if you can find an old machine to run it or virtual machine, it's still the king of samplers in terms of its ability and its power and its quality. However, that said, I have become incredibly partial to EMU filters on EMU samplers, and the Emax. I know the Emax is not the grittiest of all of them. The E2 is probably the nicest one in terms of its sound. And even the Emax 1, because it shares a lot in common with the E2. But the Z-Plane stuff that they did with their filters, there's just a quality to EMU filters that just give it a bit of character, a bit of warmth, which I always like. When I sample stuff, I don't want it to be exactly the same as what I put in. I want it to be different. I want it to be coloured in some way, and that's the Fairlight does that. Emulators do it, but Mark's waving his hands. No, you don't agree, or?
No, it's like for me. I just thought when I do something, I want it to sound like I put it in.
Sure.
I don't want it to change so much, So that it's because I want it to what happens in my brain. I want it to sound like that,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I guess, and that's the beauty of sampling. It can be anything to anyone. It can satisfy everyone's needs.
I can change it later.
Yeah, exactly. So, and you can do all sorts. Yeah.
I think I've probably been more interested and have done a lot more with granular synthesis, which of course is a form of sampling and sample manipulation. But that's been one where it's definitely what you're putting in is not going to survive, and it's going to be something completely different when you get done with it.
Yeah.
But I would think both are.
Yeah, but the thing is with sampling is in the early days we were putting samples into machines. I mean, my very first sampler was the Yamaha VSS 200. It was that little thing. It's just over there somewhere. I can't be bothered. And it was just like it was like 4-bit or 8-bit, and it was a couple of seconds maximums, and it was gritty as hell. And you could slow things down, reverse it, and put it through filters, and it just messed things up really badly. In a good way a lot of the time, and you could find sounds or rhythms in sounds that weren't immediately apparent. Now with granular, instead of kind of stretching the sample out to make something from it or slicing it up, we're going down to that minute level of detail, and then it just opens up this whole world of kind of micro sampling and digging in. I mean, I always refer to that. There was before Falcon became Falcon, it was Motu Mac 5.3, and there was a demo video. I wonder if it's still online. I have to dig it out. There's a demo video where the guy took the opening segment, the brass segment of the Star Wars theme, and drilled down to this one grain, which was essentially an amalgam of the brass section of an orchestra, but just this one grain, and then stretched it out and made it into this lovely kind of evolving pad sound just from this one grain. And I've just found that fascinating. It's really, really good. But there you go.
You got to have the time.
Yeah, exactly. It's time consuming. Yeah, you spend a lot of time just making that little sound when you could be writing a whole song. But,
but I think as you get older, you don't have as much time, because when I was like I was saying before with these Roland samples, I'd sit there for hours and hours and hours, trimming things and looping things perfectly on a sound that I might never use. It's like, well, I might need this Peruvian lute at some point. I better make sure that. And it's like, you're never going to need it. Like, just do things as and when you need them. But I seem to have this big collection of discs. There must have been like 300 or 400 discs, all perfectly looped and trimmed and what have you. Where did I find the time to do that? It's like I was making music then as well. It wasn't like now.
Yeah. No. Oh, well. Anyway, there you go.
Speaking of the filters as well, I mean, that's one of the nice things is the integration of different types of components together in one package. So whether it's a soft synth or some of these hardware ones that are giving you the digital sampling, but giving you analog or virtual analog filters, plus all the other things that come, modulation sources and that stuff that come with, say like a soft synth like Pigments, has really made it very versatile. But it's like you can spend so much time on sound design. You got to remember to make the music.
Yeah, which I think is why we probably see nowadays we have this separation of people that do sound design and people that make music, and those that make music go and buy these things from those that do sound design. It does seem to be a kind of delineation or separation of the roles, which I guess is good. And there seems to be a good industry. So.
Yeah, and I've loved to do both, and working on synthesizers and spending time sound designing. To me, there's got to be an endpoint where I don't care to make sounds just to make sounds. Like, it's got to be for a song. It's got to be something that I would want to put into a song. But when you sit down and you want to make a song, you don't want to spend another hour before you make the song by doing some sound design. Like, you want to go and get it done, and like, let's get in and let's make some music. And so to have some of that stuff all ready to go makes life a lot easier, so that you can stay on track with the creative process.
Yeah. So I was just being distracted by Ben's waving hands. Sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, for me, you know, it's just like the sound design part happens while I'm making the music, you know, like I think, I need to have this part, need to have this sample, I need to have this thing to get, you know, put it together. So I'll take all these bits and put them all together as I'm doing the song, but it's all part of that song process. It's not like I don't sit down and kind of like just make samples for the hell of it, because I won't know what to do with it, you know. And it's like it just comes to me as I'm doing it, really. You know, if I want to have a machine sounds or whatever, I'll take the machines, you know, go and record the machine or whatever. And then, you know, coffee machine, you know, and then take that and then mess around with that, add something to it, synthesizer, drums or whatever, and put something to make it not sound like a coffee machine. Yeah. Slow it down or stretch it, and then put that in the song, because it's part of that song process. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I don't just do it.
That's a good point. You know, like when I would sit and write songs on guitar, like it would be, you know, I would dial in the sound really quickly. Okay, and, you know, I'm working on writing the song, but that seems to serve a little more of a traditional strong structure type workflow. But I agree. There are times, like there's a lot of times lately, as I've gone into electronic music or ambient music, where that sound design, like, you're not intending to write a song, but that's the kind of the thing that I was saying before. Like, it's got to be something I'd want to use in a song. So sometimes that happens, and I'll start with Logic open in an empty session, just in case like you're sitting and working on something like, oh, this would make a great song. This is inspiring. I'm going to stop now and I'm going to turn this into a song. And that has been a very interesting, because it takes you in all sorts of different directions that you wouldn't have gone before, and can be quite fun. I like what you said, Mark.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, that's Reason. Their new sampler called Mimic is rolling out now for Reason Plus subscribers, and will be available as part of the subscription service and as part of standalone Reason 12 around September, October time when they release that. This next one, I had to laugh, and this, I don't know how seriously we will take this. So we're all of an age, and I'm sure many of the people in the chat room are all of an age, where we remember going to play synthesizers in actual bricks and mortar music stores. That's where we found the new technology. That's where we tested it, listened to it, talked to fellow nerds, fellow geeks, met people that we formed bands with, and so on. That doesn't happen in the age of the internet anymore. Nowadays, we are more accustomed to ordering stuff, having it delivered, and then if we like it, we keep it. If we don't, we have 14 days to return it, and that's kind of the way of the world, and it's not ideal. I certainly try not to do that as much as possible. However, Roland, in all of their infinite wisdom, have come up with a solution which is called Roland Live. Now, Roland Live is basically a virtual store. Find the product you're dreaming of, they say, from the comfort of your own home. Basically, you can book an appointment with a Roland product specialist and have a one-to-one video call, so that you can ask your questions, see the products up close, get a demonstration, etc., etc. I've just got this vision of these Roland people walking around their facility with these little handheld cameras, and, you know, with their little headset mics, and talking to you. I just, guys, am I the only one that just feels awfully cynical about this and think this is just a bit of a joke? No, I'm not alone. That's good to hear. Chris, what do you think of this? Is this something you'd use?
No.
There we go. That's one. So you at no point would you call up Roland and say, hey, please give me a demonstration of something.
Yeah, you know, it is much more difficult to find music stores to go to these days, and when you do find them, often the selection is nowhere near what you'd want to actually play in a store. So it is a difficult problem. But the other side of, you know, life in the 2020s is that we have so many good resources online, especially YouTube, to hear how things sound. And when it's recorded well, I mean, YouTube isn't screwing with your sound as much as a lot of people say it is. You can get a pretty good idea. And the thing is, like, if I did this Roland thing, I'd get one person and one person's take on it. Was if I go to YouTube and, with a company, and I'm one that is very positive about the way that companies release stuff, all these videos at the same time. And so, yeah, you're flooded on your YouTube page about all this new synth that has been released. But I think it's great because then I can go start a video. Oh, I don't really like this guy, or I don't like his playing, so I'm going to go to another one, and then find the one that really works and see how it sounds, the presentation, like, oh, this is a more technical presentation, this is a more artistic presentation, and we have our choice of all these. So even if I haven't been able to play a synthesizer with my own hands, like, I get a good representation about what it sounds like. And this is really an amazing thing about this era that we're living in, because no longer do I have to drive around all of Southern California to find that one piece of gear anymore, or call like, hey, do you have this in stock? Can I play it?
Yeah. So it's a funny old game. What's the music shop situation like in Berlin? Is there a dearth of them? Or?
No, there's not really that many. I mean, there are quite a few second-hand places and stuff. You can get second-hand stuff and that. And there's like the one main store that has kind of like quite a wide selection of stuff. But it's not like we used to have. Like, we've never really had loads of shops, to be honest.
No,
so, like music shops selling synths and stuff.
So you and Mike are not going to be dialing into a Roland live demonstration to choose your next synth for the studio.
Well, we had the Roland Cloud thing for a while.
Yeah,
it's such a pain, actually. It's such a pain. It was like this is like sort of like time consuming, and it's not coming up with the goods really. And then you get the actual hardware, and it's like a completely different, another world entirely.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if they're this kind of, do you have to pay to get into the shop? To get access to find out how it works. I don't know. I mean, it's not. It might be something I'd like to look at for a while, but I don't think I'm going to be using it as a kind of like indicator of how one of their synths is going to sound.
Sure. How about you, Ben?
I'm in two minds about it, really. I think that when Roland, when they started out, they were like so on the fringe of they just seem to do everything cooler than everybody else. It's like we design the future. It's like, that's what that slogan says to me. It's like, you can forget everything else. We design the future, and it's like they had some attitude about them and that. Yeah. And now it's just, I don't know. It's a lot of the products seem like kind of cheesy, and the way they present things has got like it's like Simon Cowell's behind it. I don't know.
I wonder how much of that might be to do with Takahashi. Once he passed away, the founder of Roland, they just became, the typical corporate company that.
Yeah, and I think this is that. It is another one of those misguided ideas that they seem to always have. I don't think it'll last. But I'm just thinking, like, for review purposes and stuff, like on here, if something new comes out, we just get on the blower to them. Like, they're gonna put us on block after a bit. Maybe ask every question that we.
Maybe that's what we should. Maybe that's what we should do. We should do it live on air. We should. We'll book a slot for Friday evening at 7:30, and we'll say, we want to have a demonstration of X, whatever it is. By the way, I've got a few friends that are going to join me, and then we'll throw them into the show. That would be cool. See how they react to that.
Yeah.
Do we dare us?
Do a live set demonstration, and that's how it works. Because it'd be an introduction for other people as well to see how it works. Is it good? It might be really good.
Yeah. The thing is, though, when I used to go into what did we have over here? We had Academy of Sound was one, and Turnkey in London, and you could go in and you could you'd be faced with all of the products. So you'd have the Korg area, the Roland area, the Yamaha area. Back in the day, I think that was pretty much all you had, but you could go to each synth and then move to the next one and think, actually that's got a different kind of tone or different feel keyboard, and you could try things out. I don't know if I'd want to just sit there and be told, oh yeah, this is the Roland whatever, and it's the best thing since sliced bread, and look at all these wonderful things you do.
You want to know how the knobs feel.
Yeah.
Do they are they when you turn them, do they go click 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 click, or do they just go like?
Or, do they have that slight?
Keyboards feel like? Does it feel like a proper keyboard? Does it feel like fucking Bon Tempe organ?
Absolutely. Could not agree. When you're buying something physical that you are going to have to interact with, you've got to know. You've got to get a sense of, like you say, the feel of the knobs and the switches and the buttons and the keys, but also a feel for its presence. How big is it actually? Because when you see things on telly, I mean, I've never seen one. I have seen a Moog one up close, but a Moog one as Cryss has got behind him there. That's a big fucking synth. And yet on the screen here, it doesn't look all of that, because it's the angle and the shot and the frame and whatever. So you just don't get an idea of the heft of the thing and is it going to fit? I'm not. Well,
it's something that Wilderness Music also brought up in the chat. He says buying a digital piano from YouTube is impossible. And again, that, like you guys say, that how does the key bed feel is a very particular thing.
Yeah.
And I've had to, back when I was mainly to guitar work, I had to go and buy a keyboard, like a workstation, for a project I was working on, but not for myself, but for other people that would be brought into it. And I sat and I played. I'm like, oh wow, these key beds all feel really different. And then, if you go into somewhere like Perfect Circuit and you get to play, 25 cents or 30 cents and keyboards, like you feel like, oh, there's a very personal aspect of it. And that's for, a synthesizer or a keyboard. When you get into, organic pieces of wood that resonate, then it gets really tough. And that's where I have a harder time is like, man, you don't know what that guitar is going to sound like if it's the sum of all of its parts are going to result in something that's really wonderful. Because I've had, custom shop Gibsons that were just flat sounding, terrible. And then I've bought some cheap used guitar that was really amazing, and it had a lot of resonance, and it just sustained, and everything was about it was perfect, and you just can't tell that
by looking at it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like buying from a catalogue all over again, isn't it? And it's just there's nothing. At least when back in our day, you could walk into an Argos store and ask to look at something before you bought it from the book. But anyway, Argos.
I ate Argos.
10 years at Argos. I did 10 years. Oh dear. I used to sneak up. We used to have all the Yamaha PSS and PSR and Casio MTs and stuff, all those kind of cheesy home keyboards. And when I was really bored, I would sneak one out and play it, and then put it back in as if it, I got quite adept at doing that from a long childhood history of opening Christmas presents the night before and putting them all back together nice and neatly. So there you go. That's Roland Live. If you want to go to it, it's just Roland.com, and then just search for Roland Live. If anybody does book an appointment, and it appears to be a free of charge service, I should hope it is. Let us know what you think, and then we'll see if we can maybe sneak them onto the show somehow and trick them in. That would be fun. We'd get a bad rep with Roland then, but hey, who cares?
I don't think we've got a good one anyway.
No, we're true.
One minor good thing about it that I guess you could see, like, I think you can pretty much get everything from watching a few online reviews anyway, but if you had very specific requirements of it and like, does it do this and this and this, what happens, that could be something that would be useful for somebody to sit there and do what you want it to do, where maybe some reviewer is not going to do that. So but I don't know, does it cost anything for them to do that?
No, I don't think
is it a service, or is it just a free service anybody can use?
According to this, do I need anything special? No. Am I obliged to buy? No.
We'll show you it, but you've got to buy it at the end.
No, there is no fee as far as I can. You just start a one-way call and you book a time. That's it. You book a slot and in you go. There you go. That's Roland Live. Amusing nonetheless. Now this one is going to sit nicely with our guest because Mark has a long history of collaborating and working with the members of New Order, and one of them has recently announced an auction, the Peter Hook Signature Collection 2021. The reason it's got 2021 on the end is because there was another one about 2 years ago. He sold a bunch of stuff, so now he's selling even more stuff off from his private collection, and I ordered the catalogue. So here it is, signed by Peter himself. This is the catalogue, and there's some amazing things in here. There's Ampex 8-inch tapes, half-inch tapes in there, 8-track tapes of New Order stuff. There's even apparently some Joy Division recordings that have been burnt to CD. So it's kind of an archive of material. There's hard drives with material on. But as far as gear's concerned, there's not a huge amount beyond Hookie's guitars and amplifiers. There's a Prophet 5. I don't know if let me just bring this myself up full screen so you can all hopefully get with this without the glare. So we go this way. So there's a Prophet 5 with the sequential poly sequencer, which starting price of £1,000. And at the bottom there, you can see the DX5, which comes in a lot along with a QX1 sequencer and an SBX80 from Roland, the time. What was it? The sync box, wasn't it?
Was it a Sympty box? That
yeah, it was kind of like a synchronization unit. But there's some Akai samplers in here. There's a whole bunch of outboard. There's tons of Roland sampling drum pads, including, you can see just there's the Simmons one as well, which was quite well used back in the day. So a whole bunch of those. There's clothing, there's tour ephemera, Oasis memorabilia, a whole bunch of bass guitars and guitars as well, including, I don't know if you can see this one here, just there, underneath my finger. That's an old John Entwistle, original John Entwistle bass that he bought, that Peter bought, and it's got a starting price of £5,000. The one that I was showing the guys before we came on air, this is the most amusing one. So over here, let's try and get out of the glare, all these boxes here, this is New Order's divorce papers, basically. All the paperwork that Peter accumulated from the split of the band. It has a starting price of £1 million, which was less than half of what it cost, that whole legal wrangle. So Rockstar's selling off old gear, number plates in there as well, whole bunch of stuff really. It's kind of fascinating, but also a little sad as well. I mean, I'm take it that Hookie's not too hard up for cash, maybe just having to clear out. Mark, what are your thoughts on Hookie selling a whole bunch of history that I guess is probably still quite personal to you?
Well, I mean, I think he's...
Oh, we've lost him. Oh, no! Oh, no! We've lost him.
Oh, that was a vital thing as well. He was just about to give us insight on the New Order split and everything.
Oh no! So I've got to. Oh, he's back!
I'm not back in.
You're back!
I've been having you blocking, like you've been going on, like blinking like this all the time. I'm like thinking, what's going on here? And you just suddenly went off.
Be still my beating heart.
I was just about to say, like it's a bit personal, really, and I think that his reasons for doing it must be trying to get his money back from the court case.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I know in the last auction he was selling a Transcendent 2000 as the original, which people believed, and it isn't. It wasn't the original because I have the original, and it's
right.
like,
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah.
I mean, it's like it's up to people wanting to, if they want to buy this kind of stuff, then and it's supposedly for charity. Supposedly for that as well.
Course, yeah.
It's charity stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone, would be really interested in having the files of a court case, to be honest.
I'm hoping that's a joke, that one, but I don't know.
But it is. I mean, so if he's clearing out and he wants to move house and he doesn't want to lug it all around with him, fair enough. What's he going to do with it in the future? I don't know. His kids still want it. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. I keep telling my kids, you're going to inherit my record collection, and they look at me like I've just kicked them in the nuts. They just don't want it. But no, I mean, there's a fantastic amount of stuff in here, and so to what you said there about the some of the stories, the Prophet 5 and the Poly Sequencer are listed here. The first sentence says, one of the many sequential circuits Prophet 5 synthesizers and Poly sequencers we used for Blue Monday, Hurt, and all the other sequencer songs. The final sentence of that paragraph says, I can't say it's the exact one we used to record Blue Monday, which he's just now contradicting, but maybe Stephen Barney will do a post about it. So I guess that's a dig at, some of the comeback that like you said, who's selling stuff. I mean, I don't know whether it was genuine, a genuine mistake. Maybe he genuinely believed that was the one, or whether he was trying to pull the wool over people's. I don't know. I've seen some of this stuff because when he wrote one of his books, I forget which one it was. Him and Howard Marks did a book tour, and I went to that, and he actually brought a whole bunch of stuff and set it up on the stage. We could all go and have a look at it.
I've got 20% on my phone here.
Oh no! Right, yeah. Okay. So that's Peter Hook. Let's do this. So before we started the show, before we started the show, Mark said I'm on my phone and I don't know how much power I've got left. So we want to try and get as much out of him as possible. So let's stop the news there. Let's crack on with talking to Mark.
And if I go off, right, I've gone off.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I've got a power supply here, but it's like I can't put my headphones into the power supply.
Oh, of course, stupid thing, isn't it? Oh no. Right. Okay. Well, let's cut the news. We can finish that off.
You can do the news when I've gone.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Sorry, Chris.
It might be possible if the volume's not too loud on the phone, just to take the headphones off, and we do have on the StreamYard feedback suppression. So
let us know if you want to do that.
We'll see.
Yeah, see how we go. And we can turn on the echo cancellation. Anyway, so Mark Reeder, born and raised in Manchester, moved to Berlin after a stint at Virgin Records in Manchester, which was like early Virgin Records, not Virgin Megastore type. And you moved to Berlin in the mid to late 70s?
1978.
Right? 1978. So you were in Manchester at that really kind of pivotal time, 2 years after the Pistols played. I can't remember. Were you at the lesser?
No, I didn't go.
You didn't go to that one.
I didn't go.
No. One of the few people that's honest and says, no, I didn't go, because a lot of people say, I was there, but they never were.
I was there,
yeah. I was there.
My mates went, but that.
Yeah.
I had been working in the shop. I went home.
I did some work in Manchester. I used to walk up and down past that place and didn't realise until the last day I was there that was where it all happened, where the Sex Pistols played and changed the kind of the outlook of Manchester for a number of generations. But you left Manchester. You were involved with Joy Division. You were friends with the band. You knew Ian, you knew Barney, and all the rest of them. And Rob, and Gretton, and all of that stuff. You moved to Berlin. Why did you go? What was the appeal of Berlin at the time? Because obviously we have to remember today is also the 60th anniversary, the beginning of the construction of the Berlin Wall. So by the time you got out there, the wall had been up nearly 18 years.
Yeah. What
was the appeal of Berlin? Why did you go there?
I just went there because nobody wanted to go there. Nobody, people. I've been to West Germany and asked people about Berlin, and they were like, "Oh, you don't want to go there." Yeah. So I was kind of curious as to what was there, and I was thought there are probably a load of record shops where I can get these old records like Popol Vuh and things like that, and I just thought I'd just go and have a look at it and have a look at the wall, go for the day, have a look, and so I just went and I never came back. It was like, wow, what a place,
So, what was your kind of your first gig out there? What were you doing? To earn a crust.
Well, the first thing I did was to become Joy Division's promoter. Mm-hmm. It was I'd gone there, and Rob Gretton said to us, "Oh, now you're in Berlin, maybe you can promote our re-release of An Ideal for Living. I've just pressed it up as a 12-inch,
right? And
you can promote that." And I got Rob to pay me rent. Because my rent was only 80 marks, which is about 40 euros.
Yeah.
And he paid my telephone bill and stuff, and it was nothing really for him. So and he willingly did that because it was next to nothing. And at the time when it actually started, I wasn't paying rent at all because I was living in this house that was about going to be torn down. So I was squatting this house for about 8 months, and I just did that for a while, and then the idea was to make Factory Deutschland,
right?
But Tony was like, what kind of records do you want to release on Factory Deutschland? And it was things like Mania Day and eventually Malaria, and he was like, I can't sell that. It's, it doesn't sound like a song. But I was their representative. I became the factory representative in Berlin, and that kind of got me into all the gigs for free.
Cool. And then you became a musician yourself. You started, bands, and you were telling me some wonderful tales of your gigs, and even promoting bands and taking them across the wall into East Germany.
Well, it was like starting a band wasn't intentional. I had no intention of starting. I'd been in a band with Mick Hucknall called the Frantic Elevators in Manchester, and I thought I don't want to do that, but having a guitar and then someone saying, "Oh, you got a guitar? Maybe you can do a gig." And I'm being drugged up and drunk. I'm like, yeah, cool. and it ended up being a gig, and then I did another gig, and it ended up being a band. We were called Unbekannten, which means the unknown. Which we remained as such, and later on it was like, okay, I became the sound engineer for Malaria. This all-girl band, fronted by Gudrun Gut and Bettina Köster. And from that I became the Totenhausen sound engineer for their live gigs. I'd not learned this job. I just became this person because they thought, what our sound sounds like, and they thought I was quite good, and so I got the job. and I took Totenhausen to East Berlin, and it was at the time it was no one had ever done that before, and I didn't realise that at the time. I mean, I played in Czechoslovakia. In 1982, a similar kind of event. It was like a secret gig disguised as a wedding reception in the middle of nowhere in Czechoslovakia. Wow. And all the dissidents, came to this gig. And I realised, it's possible to do these kind of things in the East, but it was dangerous, of course. It wasn't like, it was like secret, And I mean, when I mean secret, I mean like, nobody knew. Only a handful of people knew. And the same thing we did in East Berlin, and it cascaded into this kind of like punk rock thing because we did it in a church.
I was going to say it was a lot of your gigs that you did over there were in churches because that was the only place that you could have live music.
No, it was because they did a thing called a blues mass, which was like the church was like sanctuary for people. It was like an anti-state kind of statement, but it was like it was a sanctuary for people, and so they could do things within the church confines, and it became the kind of place where all the punks would go to practice and play because they knew that they couldn't play anywhere else. They couldn't play in youth clubs or at gigs, so they went there. And it wasn't like I was going every week taking bands to play. I only did it twice, but it was what it created which was important. It was the real kind of spirit of punk rock, if you like, the rebelliousness of punk rock and the uncontrollability of punk rock was manifested in the East German churches by all these bands like Verfall and Planlos, Zerfall, sorry. They were the ones that kind of like started this thing in East Germany, and it was really important for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, the East German Stasi had a massive file on you. I understand. Is that true?
Yeah. Well, they collected quite a lot of information on my activities. I'm not allowed to say it all, but I've seen a fifth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Because I mean, obviously it's been however many years since reunification, but you're still not allowed to see stuff that was held on you by a regime that no longer exists.
Well, it's not them that's got it.
Oh, right, okay. All right, we'll draw a line there. Fair enough. So, if people want to know more about Mark's kind of time in Berlin, I want to get this out again before just in case we do lose you.
I've got 10%.
Oh no! If you want to try and plug in your thing, and we'll just go with the microphone and the speaker in the phone. That's absolutely fine with us. But one of the ways that you can really get your teeth into Mark's story is through the movie called B-Movie Lust and Sound in West Berlin, 1979 to 1989. Fair rolls off the tongue, that one. But it is an absolutely stunning documentary movie that is based around Mark's life. Basically, it's your life that's kind of the center of the story, that everything has kind of been hung off of, and you're telling the story of your time in Berlin, but also of what was going on in the culture, in the clubs and the bands that were emerging, and what was happening over the wall in East Germany. I've got a trailer here somewhere. I'm anxious about.
Sie empfangen den Berliner Rundfunk mit Nachrichten.
I'm dubious if we might get a copyright strike for this. But
Stürmische Beifall und Hochrufe galten dem Generalsekretär des ZK der SED und Vorsitzenden des Staatsrates der DDR, Erich Honecker, und weiteren Mitgliedern der Partei und Staats...
During the 80s, West Berlin was a city in a state of emergency. A creative melting pot for sub and pop culture, masterminding amateurs and potential global superstars.
I was going to stop that there because I am conscious we might get a copyright strike at some point from that. We saw a little bit of Nick Cave there because Nick Cave lived with you for a while. That's right?
Mm.
Yeah, he was a tenant or a sub.
Well, I talked him into coming to Berlin. Basically, I said to him, he kept asking me, "What's it like?" It's really good, and I said, you can stay me until you find your own flat, and that's exactly what he did.
Yeah,
he came and just arrived one day with a suitcase and stayed for a while until he found his own flat.
Where can we see this B movie? Because is it still? It was on iTunes at some point, but only in certain territories. Where can people get hold? I managed to get the DVD. It's still only available in Germany.
Yeah, you can. Wow. It's only available in Germany, and you can only get it on DVD in Germany. Amazon.de.
Right.
Still, and it's multi regional DVDs.
Mm-hmm.
Get it set everywhere in the world.
Right. Because I managed to pick up. So I managed to pick up the box set, which contains the film, the soundtrack, and a few bits and bobs as well. He's gone again. Oh no, we've lost him. Oh well. Yeah. So if you want to watch the film B movie, Lust and Sound in West Berlin, that tells the story of the Berlin culture, basically between 1979 and 1989, where Mark is kind of central to that story, and then everything kind of hangs off of that. It's well worth a watch. And yeah, I think Amazon, the German version of Amazon, if you go there, you can find it there and then import it. And obviously, you might have to pay some duties on it, but it's such a great film. And Mark does do tours around various places still to this day, taking the film out, showing it to people in an audience, and then doing Q&A sessions to that. And he's taken it to China, and he's done it in all around Europe and America, I think, as well. So, yeah, there we go. Hopefully, we'll get Mark back in just a moment. I'm really sorry about this. It's just one of those kind of technical things. He started breaking up and then went. So, guys, let's do another news topic, shall we?
Yeah.
Let me just find one, and we can do that. Right. How about... Oh, hang on. He's back.
Oh.
Where's get him in? Yay! He's back.
Yes.
I'm sorry about that, chaps.
No, not at all. No. It's your presence is most welcome again. That's great.
Well, I'm on power now, so
brilliant. That's good. Yeah, we'd rather have you like this than not at all. Yeah, absolutely fine. Yeah. So we were just saying that the film you still, I think you are still kind of taking it out and about and showing it in various places around the world and doing Q&A sessions. Is that something that's still kind of actively going on? Yeah.
Well, not because of the coronavirus, but obviously
of course,
not,
yeah.
That's kind of like curtailed that part of my life, really,
yeah.
For the moment. Well, that's what I've been doing, is taking it around the world, showing it to people, from everywhere that's interested, really.
Yeah.
I'm still the way people to see it.
Yeah, I'm still amazed that it's not got kind of a global thing. But having spoken to people that make, I want to say kind of, I don't mean this is the greatest respect, kind of niche films that are about specific, things to do with art and culture. It's so difficult to get it out there across, to a wide audience. It really does need to be seen. I remember because you invited me to the ICA when you brought it over to London. And that was the first time I saw it, and it just blew me away. It was just one of those, when you watch a film and it's like in your head for a couple of weeks, the music, the stories, and I kept having to, sort of research this, and eventually got the Blu-ray and now watch it frequently. It's such a great film. And New Order used some of the footage in one of their last from the Music Complete album, didn't they?
Yeah, for Singularity.
That's it.
For Singularity, they used that as their background video initially. For when they played the song, and then that became the video.
Yeah.
And that's really the only way that most people can get to see sort of like a 3-minute version of the film, really. And that the thing is that because it's not available everywhere, it's created its own kind of mythical kind of thing, and I think that is also quite attractive, really. It's not, it's not readily available everywhere, and you can get it in every department store, whatever. It's not available on iTunes. It's not available on, Netflix or whatever. It's not available. So easy, and you have to search for it, and you get some kind of bootleg, or you might get to find someone who's got the DVD. And I think that makes it special.
Yeah.
And also, if they want to see the film with me, because when I do these evenings, it's like they get to see the movie. I do a Q&A and explain things, and they get to see that I'm real and it's not just some kind of person.
Yeah, because that's
made up.
Well, there's lots of clips in the film, because part of what you've done over the years in Berlin is you've appeared in movies being made in Berlin, so they've used that footage and cut it in at certain times. So even I was sat there thinking, well, why were they filming this? And then this is because the story isn't the story that the guys behind this film you found like box loads of old VHS cassettes and just gave them to them.
Yeah. I was like, they initially approached me for the soundtrack. Really, it was like because I'd made an album called 5.1 with tracks that I'd made in surround sound, and they thought it was a really good idea. Maybe I could renovate some of these old songs, old 7-inch singles, and so they'd sound good in the cinema. And I was thinking, maybe I've got some old tapes there, some footage of Berlin, because I thought I didn't really know what they wanted to utilize as images, and I thought I've got some footage there of old things I did in Berlin in the 80s. Maybe they'll be interested in that. So I gave them all these box of tapes, and they were like, "What's this?" And then they realised that, I've been an Englishman living in Berlin. I've got a completely different approach to the city of West Berlin than the West Berliners and the West Germans and the East Germans, and my approach kind of was more cynical, I suppose, and kind of humorous in a sense, because I kind of looked at it with different eyes, really, from a completely different perspective, and that was kind of interesting for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Cryss, you had something.
Yeah, well, the kind of whole distribution thing, getting back to that, I mean, talking about like where you can find it and having to hunt it down, it really seems similar to some of your own experiences, as well as probably all of our experiences if we're old enough, where to find those kind of music, that interesting local music, and having to search it out and find it. And I know you've talked about it before, Mark, about like having to find some band or some recording, and then everybody duping the tape and it getting spread around like that, whereas in this current age, like it just everything's digital and gets out to YouTube. What do you think that brings to the music of that kind of having to hunt for it?
I think that's really important. I think that's always been the joy of looking for music. Looking for records that you'd heard about, or you didn't even know what they sounded like. You just heard about them, so you'd go looking for them to see if you could buy it or whatever. I mean, in my youth, that was one of my main pastimes, was like scouring the record. It still is.
Well, it's funny you should say that.
I still go around there.
Do you remember this day from about 4 years ago? And if you can see that on your screen, me and thee in a record shop in Berlin, just spending hours. Yeah, that's it. And my wife took that photo because she was getting extremely exasperated because we were just like talking. It was just great. Yeah, it's really good fun.
But, we still do this, and I think that in this day and age where everything's available, it not being available or easily available gives it an added kind of like allure. It's attractive, it's different, it's something to discover. I like people to be able to discover it. I think it's like the discovery thing, the over kind of marketing kill, really. That's never been my kind of thing. I mean, like even with the music that I make today, even, I don't try and overkill and oversell it. I think I like people to discover it. I like people to find out about it years later and realize like, why I've not heard this before. And, I think that is more exciting somehow. Yeah. For me, it is anyway. I don't know about other people, they might be frustrated.
So you mentioned 5.1, which was, for me, it was just like, at last, somebody's kind of making, they're not just taking old, like an old album and just remixing it in 5.1. You're taking your mixes of some incredible singles, stuff by, Pet Shop Boys, Depeche Mode, some of those early German bands as well, and you're mixing them in 5.1 surround. And we've talked about this personally, about our love of it and what we love about it. But what kind of motivated you to make 5.1, and then are you planning a sequel? That's my next question.
I mean, the initial idea, I mean, I'm a fan like you are, I was always fascinated by this surround sound idea. And, when they first got the surround sound, amplifiers, I immediately went and bought one, and was like trying to track down as many surround sound albums as I possibly could. That kind of stems back even to like the 70s when I went with Kunstkopf. I don't know if you remember what that is. Like Tangerine Dream and stuff in Kunstkopf was like amazing. And I always wanted to have a quad system. But quad systems was you didn't see them in the UK very often, and they were dead expensive. And as a teenager, I couldn't afford that. I got a few quad records in the hope, but I never actually got a quad player. And so when this opportunity arose, whereby I was thinking, I've got the possibility now to do a surround sound album, and I've got the technology to do a surround sound album. I said to Misha, Adam, my partner, let's do this. Let's when we do this, this mix, let's do it in surround sound, see what it sounds like. And one of the first things I think we did was Underpass, actually. In surround sound, it was like, that sounds pretty interesting, as a surround sound track. It's kind of immersive, And then we just decided we'd do this album, and every track that we did, every mix that we made a surround sound mix specifically for 5.1.
Right.
And I called it 5.1 because I wanted people to know what it's about.
Exactly.
Most people don't know what it means.
Yeah.
I don't even realise what the logo is on the cover.
I know that the logo is the official logo for 5.1. And one of the other things that I admired about that album was that there are so many different formats out there that carry surround sound. Super Audio CD, DVD audio, Blu-ray, of course. But back then, you put this out on DVD video, so literally anybody with a 5.1 system and a regular DVD player could listen to it. Yeah.
I mean, I would have liked to have had it as a Blu-ray or whatever, but I was thinking it's like I want it to be accessible to virtually everyone everyone who's got a DVD player. They can, and you just have to have a surround sound system. Yeah,
and it's funny you mentioned the John Fox track. When we announced that you were coming on the show, I had a few messages saying, this guy has made the best remix of Underpass that we've ever heard. It is, and I think, like you said, because of the nature of that song, Underpass being Underpass with all the audio, the sound would surround you in an underpass. It just works brilliantly in 5.1. It's a great thing.
I'm happy to hear that people quite like it, because for me, this song was such an iconic track, and when John asked us to mix it, I was like, oh gosh, if I mess this up, the fans will murder me, like it's got to be done justice too, and then John sent me the parts, and it was like 8 tracks, and it was like, and I was like, it was like, go straight to the synthesizer bit that goes the main hook line, and it was this synthesizer sound that went me me. And I was like, this, and I phoned his manager and said, Steve, can you send us the break, the sound, he was like, that's it.
Yeah.
I was like, what are we going to do? How are we going to create that? I was thinking, John, in Gareth Jones' studio, he only had a certain amount of instruments and equipment at that point, you know. So I went back to my Space Echo and just put it through that, and it was like, there it is.
Yeah. So do you find that when you're putting these tracks together, you get hold of the multi-tracks, and I guess all that stuff is dry, and you have to then kind of go back and try and recreate and figure out, you know, what processing was put on, what effects were put on. Do you ever have the luxury of, you know, notes on these things, or is it all just guesswork and, you know, trial and error?
Most of it's guesswork, but I don't want to replicate it exactly one-to-one. I mean, I didn't even replicate it exactly one-to-one like in my remix. I just needed to know how he'd done it first before I could change it. Because I don't want, it's a remix. It should sound different, you know. That said, Misha and I, we made an actual remake version in 5.1 on the 5.1 album.
Right.
It's a hidden Easter egg.
Yes.
On the album, and that's the original version of the single version of Underpass in its original form, with the original kind of like reverbs and everything, which we created. But for my mix, I made others, and when I have other tracks from other people, you know, everything's. I want it dry. I don't want it with the effects on it. I want it dry because I want to be able to use it in my way, the way I feel it should sound in my remix. Really
cool.
Yeah.
So you've lived in Berlin all this time. You've seen bands come and go. You've promoted them. You've engineered for them. You've recorded them. Towards the end of the 80s, things started to change, and a new type of music was emerging, very much an electronic type of music. Which would turn into what we now know as kind of trance and techno. And you were right at the kind of the vanguard of that emergence of that sound in Berlin with your label, Masterminded for Success, the MFS label, which you've just rejuvenated. How did that all come about? Where did that start? Is it Paul van Dyk? You were kind of instrumental in getting him out there into the scene?
Well, you know, in the 1989, before the fall of the Berlin Wall, literally before the fall of the Berlin Wall, I was producing an album in East Berlin for a band called Division. It was like a kind of indie rock band, and I'm like, you know, sitting there as East Germany's falling apart, and trying to make this album. And when I finished making the album, it was the 2nd of November. On the 9th of November, the wall came down, so which I missed, by the way, and. I was like, already been like working on this LP, and I knew these people from the state-owned communist state-owned record label Amiga, and I was thinking, well, you know, there's another kind of music happening in West Berlin that you don't even know about. It's called techno, and it's like, you know, I've been involved in the kind of acid house scene and everything in West Berlin, and kind of tried to, you know, dabbled in that a little bit and tried to kind of get into that sort of thing, and I'd always been going out to the clubs which played electronic disco music, even, you know, like the Metropole, and so my kind of like, you know, like, it was a natural progression into the techno world, because this was a new kind of sound. It was a new kind of electronic sound. Finally, we kind of got there, and then I was like, well, you know, now's your chance. You know, like Amiga, you don't have to do anything that the state says anymore. You can make it up yourself, and there's a brand new sound, and you've got to do this. And they were like, well, we don't know anything about it, and if you know everything about it, why don't you do it? And so I was like, okay, so I'll start a record label. Can I use your facilities? Yeah, you can use our facilities. And so, great, I'll do it. And I called my label Masterminded for Success, simply because I wanted to keep the 3 letters MFS, because the MFS means Ministerium für Staatssicherheit, which means the Ministry for State Security, colloquially known as the Stasi, the secret police. And I wanted just to keep those 3 letters, but I knew that if I called it MFS, the people in the Amiga would say definitely not, you know. So I called it Masterminded for Success, because I knew they didn't speak English, and they thought, you know, they didn't look at it in an English way. You know, it's a long word. Like if it was German, they'd immediately abbreviate it, but because it was like an English word, they just kind of accepted it. And it was only when I stuck up these posters on the day of my record release launch, the first launching of the record, we did a record release party. We did a record release press conference in room 101 in the Amiga building.
Yeah.
And it was Abhör room 101, which is the room where they listen to demos and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But Abhör means kind of listening in, yeah. And it had this kind of like George Orwell thing, which they didn't know about. And I was sticking up these posters outside, and it said MFS, we are back. And they went berserk. They weren't happy at all with me. But they'd gone too far by this point. They couldn't stop. and as it turned out, it was the most successful part of their kind of like within their sphere. It was the most successful bit, you know.
Yeah.
And I managed to kind of like, you know, find artists like Cosmic Baby who I knew before, and I said, I'm doing a label. Do you want to do something? And he was like, yeah, I've got this idea about making some kind of like trippy melodic version of techno, because I thought there's a load of people out there who really can't get the connection to techno. It's, you know, some hi-hat just opening up for a little bit and kind of like some bass drum kind of, you know, they couldn't really get their heads around that. I thought they needed some kind of melody. They needed something that was kind of emotional, especially people in the UK. You know, I thought they needed something that was emotional. In the UK, we had Happy Mondays and Spiral Carpets and Stone Roses as rave music, and in Germany we had techno, which was like coming from like basically from most of it from Detroit at that point.
Yeah. And
it was like, yeah, you know, like, but they just didn't get it really. So I was thinking, like, if I can mix this kind of euphoria of taking ecstasy and, you know, this unification of like Germany, this feeling of like happiness and kind of like the threat of nuclear holocaust has been lifted off our shoulders and everything. And it was like a very positive time, you know. I thought we could put that into music, and I was looking at like someone like Cosmic Baby who I knew was musical. I thought, maybe you'll understand this idea, and I just let him run with it, and then I met Paul van Dyk and invited him as well, and kind of just said, yeah, go into the studio with Johnny Kleemek and just do something, you know, and whatever came out of it was what it was, you know, and I just let it kind of just to develop on its own, like, you know, see where it goes. I didn't have any kind of like plan of anything as such. I just let it run. Yeah. You know.
And how about you as a musician? You know, what were you doing at that time? Were you still you were just engineering, producing?
No. I let John Kleemek do that.
Right. Okay.
So I just let them get on with it. But I'd go there and oversee. I was the executive producer. I'd make suggestions, and I'd make when the artist went home, I'd make suggestions and changes and fiddle.
Right. Sure. So your musical career, you know, you mentioned some of the bands that you were in. You supported New Order at some point. Just going to steer the conversation, you know, briefly over to, you know, music technology. What sort of music technology were you into? You know, I know you play guitar, but obviously you have a collection of synthesizers. You know, what sort of thing kind of floats your boat? What gets you excited?
Well, you know, all the synthesizers that I ever wanted, I couldn't afford. You know, Jupiter 8 and Profits and stuff like that. They're all like way out of my price range at that point. You know, so I had to kind of like take whatever was going really. And my first synthesizer was I had an MS-20 and I had a Moog synthesizer which Klaus Schulze gave to me. I can't remember which one it was. It's the one with the wood on it and the slider, the silver one with the slider.
Right.
And I can never remember his bloody name, but Klaus Schulze gave us this synthesizer, and it was a bloody beast. It had a mind of its own. It never had the same sound twice. It was a nightmare to play, and we were trying to play it live. And once I tried to play it live on LSD, and that was a really bad idea. It was a really, really bad idea. I was like, it's out of tune. And I'm trying to tune it with this sliding pitch wheel. Well, I'm trying to play it at the same time. It's like, no, this is not happening.
Oh, crazy.
That was a beautiful. It's a great instrument, really great instrument, and I have no idea where that ended up. And then I got I had a Poly 6 at one point, which I got off Dimitri Hageman who runs the Trésor label. We shared the same practice room, and he had this synthesizer which he never used, and I said, I can use it. So I used that for quite a few years, Poly 6, which I really adore, and I wish I'd still have it, you know, because I think it had some really interesting sounds in the synthesizer. It was really different to the Juno 106, which I eventually bought, and which I find to this day it's like unsurpassable, really, for me.
Really?
Really. And it's not a Jupiter 8, but it's a 106, and it's like the 106 is like my baby, really. Yeah. And then I had the Transcendent 2000, which was like just made noise. It makes all this kind of sort of sound. It's not a pretty synthesizer.
No. And being obviously in Berlin, so close to the East, was there an infiltration of those kind of Eastern European Russian synthesizers like the Polyvox and stuff like that? Nothing like that at all?
No, you never saw them, ever.
Wow.
I mean, I didn't know anybody in East Berlin who had a Polyvox or a Monovox for that matter. No, I didn't know anybody. I think that, and this one band that I actually found on the street for the Tube called Jessica, the guy who played the keyboard in that band, he'd actually made his own synthesizer. And it was made out of cast iron. Yeah, it was like painted in the army green paint, nicked from the army, and it had this like beast of a machine. It only weighed about 10 tons. It was huge, but he built this himself, because there was no access to stuff like that, And even if there was, I mean, it was only given to certain sort of people who were musicians and stuff, and as they weren't established musicians, they had no chance of finding it. They had, in East Germany, they had one Oberheim drum machine. That was it, and that was and we, as we were making in this, it belonged to the Brunnenstrasse Studios, which was the Omega Studios in East Berlin. It belonged to them, but they'd lent it out to the Staatsballett der DDR, which was like the state ballet for and they never gave it back. So I had to smuggle my drum machine, which was a Kawai drum machine, smuggle that with my army mate into East Berlin so we could program make electronic drums on the record.
Oh, wow.
Bonkers.
Because there was a very famous, I say very famous, recently discovered synthesizer called the Sub-Harcourt, which was stored in, like you say, one of these institutions within East Germany, and was only accessible by professors or people that, and it kind of recently got rediscovered, and an old friend of mine actually did a sampling project on it. I don't know whatever happened to that material, but some of those Eastern European Russian pieces of music technology were just bonkers, absolutely bonkers stuff.
I would love a Monovox or a Polyvox. I mean, I know of some people in Romania who've got 3 or 4. They sound totally different to anything that's like Western synths, completely different. And I mean, it's just something else, really. Like what we had in the West, that everybody wanted in the East. They didn't really, they didn't want the Russian stuff. They wanted the Western stuff. The Brunnenstrasse sound studios had a mellotron, in perfect working order, and they had the Steinway grand piano. They had a forest of Neumann microphones. They had Vox amplifiers, Marshall stacks. They had a 1968 Stratocaster. They had all these things that from the West that they'd bought from the West. The thing is, in East Germany, you couldn't go to a shop and buy an instrument. You couldn't go to buy an electric guitar. You certainly couldn't buy a synthesizer. You couldn't buy the cable that you plugged into the guitar. It was simple. Like you could buy a guitar maybe in Hungary and smuggle it into East Germany. Right. You needed a permit to own a guitar in East Germany, but you couldn't find the plug to stick it into the amplifier, and you had to find an amplifier. It's very, very difficult to get the equipment. People got the grannies to smuggle it in, bring it to gifts and stuff like that, but it was very, very difficult.
Wow. It sounds like hard times, but some of it does have its good points. I could see a complete carpet black ban on guitars working today. I think that would go down well with a lot of people. That
I think it's only fair that I let our resident guitarist come back at that.
Yeah, I'd be unhappy there with that as well, because I formulate a lot of ideas on the guitar, and then translate them into synthesizer sounds. It's really easy to do, It's really easy to do.
Would you ever use one of those guitar synthesizer controller things? We was on about one of them.
I always wanted a MIDI guitar. When they came out, they were horrendously expensive.
Not very good.
And I believe they weren't very good. But I'd never actually used one. But I'd always, the fantasy that it might be today, it might be good because technology being what it is, and the realms of the things you can do with it, it might be quite good. But I never wanted to midify my guitar. that would have been sacrilege, really, to like modify a Strat or a Gibson Les Paul or something. It'd be, I can't imagine doing that.
I think there's a lot of potential in that guitar controller thing, isn't there? Because of the the expression possibilities. It's a lot more expressive than a keyboard. But
you could also do different things with it. Use it, put it through a wah-wah pedal or something like that, and like what that happens, and then synthesize it and stuff. I don't know. I've never done it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
What's your philosophy, when it comes to playing guitar versus synthesizer, and how you compose? You said you do a lot of composing on guitar and translate it to synth, but how do you approach each instrument individually?
Well, I think they all go hand in hand for me, because I think that it's like they're all part of the process of making the track. Mm-hmm. I when I'm making the track, it's happening in my head at the same time, and I think this, and this, and I think I can play that faster on the guitar than I can play it on the keyboard, or I want to use those notes, and I just find that they work hand in hand, because I play bass, I play guitar, I play synthesizer together in a sense, and I usually start with kicks and bass, get the groove going, and then build on that usually, if I can. Or I might have an idea. I might have an idea for a synthesizer sound, or something. It'll play. It's whatever you're faffing around with at the time. It might just suddenly just go click. That's what I want. That's what I wanted.
MFS went away, and recently you've brought it back with the relaunch of the label and your own album on there, Subversive Decadent. So what prompted you to bring the label back? Was it just a way of getting your own music out there easily, or? Well,
I stopped MFS in 2008 because I got bored.
Right.
I got bored that things just seemed to be like treading the same thing over and over again. The thing I felt that the music wasn't kind of evolving in any kind of real way, and I thought that the perceptions of people, different younger people, not wanting to just do the same thing. 30 years of techno was quite a long time, and I was like, it's not, it's like we need to have some more changes, really. And I could see that people, the kind of music, the different kinds of music people were listening to, and the way people listen to music, with the involvement of, like, say, something like an iPod, where people were listening to not just to one kind of sound anymore. They weren't just listening to techno. They weren't just living the techno lifestyle that we were living in 1990. They kind of, the younger generation had kind of like branched out, and kind of they were listening to everything. They were getting gigabytes of music on as MP3s and listening to everything. And they'd come to me and say, "Do you know like King Crimson, and do you know like Led Zeppelin?" And it's like the way they consumed the music was different. And I thought, the music has to evolve in some way. And I just saw it. Thought it was just kind of standing still somehow, and I just thought I'll just stop and I'll wait until something interesting comes along before I restart. I didn't stop entirely, of course, but I just kind of stopped like releasing stuff. And then I went to China with B Movie to show B Movie. I went on tour with a DJ called Nibing, who's a very old friend of mine, and he took me on a Chinese tour with the film, and we DJ'd in clubs and showed the film. And I played at this festival in Chengdu, and there was this band called Stolen, and they were the headliners on the last night, and they just blew my mind. It was like, wow, they are presenting something to a young Chinese audience that the young Chinese audience had never had before, and it was like what they were presenting was a mixture of techno and rock music and everything that you'd kind of heard, but in their own kind of development, really. And it was like, wow, that's really interesting. And we got chatting, and then they asked me if I'd go into their studio and help them with the demo that they were working on. And they eventually released this demo, and then they came to Berlin, and I made an album with them called Fragment.
Yeah.
And I thought, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with this record? Now we've worked on it for about a year. And they were like, well, we're going to release it in China. I said, what about the West? They were, not good enough. Who says you're not good enough? We've done this record together, but I'll put it out on MFS, and I'll see what happens, And then Bernard Sumner heard it, and he was like, we were in Poland, and he was like, oh, what are you doing? I'm working on an album with a Chinese band. And he's like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And he was kind of taken aback by it. And he asked me if they would be interested in going on tour with New Order, a European tour in October 2019. And I said, well, if we can work it out, we'll come.
Yeah.
And so Stolen toured with New Order.
Wow.
And blew them off stage every night. No, they were really good. They were really good, and New Order fell in love with them, and it was like, yeah, you know, they're good lads, and they're interesting, and it's a different world, you know, and it's like, okay, and so MFS was reborn through that, and then when I came to do Subversive Decadent, which is like a kind of like a compilation of recent remixes for various people, including New Order and Yellow. Yeah. But they're the kind of like this. They're the kind of points that people kind of recognise. But on there's like other people as well, like Zachary Allen Starkey and Fifi Long, and you know, Birmingham Electric, Queen of Hearts, you know, Alan Astros now. You know,
what do you prefer doing? Because you've done a ton of and superb remixes. I mean, your New Order remixes on the Music Complete campaign were just brilliant and really well received. But we don't hear so much from Mark Reeder, the musician. It's more Mark Reeder, the remixer. Is that a deliberate choice, or are you looking to do something under your own name that's individual? Or
I mean, I'm not chasing after anything really, you know. I mean, I've not got any kind of aspirations to be Mark Reed on stage, do you know, like solo performance. You know, it's like I do it as I do it, and the tracks that I do under my own name are just like in between the things that I'm doing with other people, really.
Right.
Like on Subversive Decadent, there are a couple of tracks, but they're just fillers really for me, you know. To be honest, you know, I mean, the idea is not to put myself in the spotlight. I've never chased that. I've never chased that. I've always wanted to be behind the curtain, the iron curtain.
Well, quite.
So when it does come to your remixes, which are wonderful, and I spent some time just like listening through set up a YouTube playlist of just your remixes, and we're checking them out versus the originals. And so when it comes to doing these remixes, I like to know the why. You know, I know what you did, but what is your mindset going into a remix? There's a song that's already been done. Sometimes these songs are already very popular. How do you go about adding your creative process to a remix?
Well, I'll look at it as like, well, if someone else was going to do a remix, how would I like it to sound? Would I want to back, you know, like as it is? Because like you hear a lot of remixes these days, and it's just like as if they got something off the shelf and just slapped the vocal in some kind of version on top of it, you know, or they've not really given it any kind of thought, you know, like the melody. I like the remix to be recognizable as the original song, even though it's a remix. I want people to be able to say, I know what it is. You know, they recognize the music, they recognize the song, they recognize the melodies. I change things, of course, and I play stuff on it, but at the same time, I still want it to be recognizable as what it was in its original form. You know, so that's how I usually approach it. I want it to have that reminiscence of its original feel, but at the same time have a different feel, have my signature to it, you know, add my own part to it. So people say, they can tell it's a Mark Reeder remix over you know, some other remix to it, you know. And I want people to be able to enjoy it. I want people to be able to listen to it at home. I want people to be able to listen to it in the car. You know, I want to be able to go on the street, have it on their headphones. You know, I want it to be able to. It's like, for me, it's like I want it to be like a soundtrack version of the mix that they released, you know. And I try my best to make it as good as I possibly can. And you know, I always think if fans like the original one, they've got to like mine, because otherwise I don't want to be like hung for making a terrible.
But it's a common kind of thing that happens, and I hate it. I really hate it. It's happened for a number of years where people do a remix and it's completely a different song, except for maybe they've used a bit of the vocal hook, or maybe you know, that little bit of guitar or that little synth thing, but everything else is completely different, and very rarely, for me anyway, works. Because when I was buying 12-inch singles in the early 1980s, I was buying them because I wanted a longer, bigger, version of the song that I heard on the radio, not not somebody's interpretation of, oh, there's a few notes, I'll take that and then just throw the rest away. I wanted the big extended version. And when I listen to your stuff, that's kind of what I'm getting, but I'm also getting a little kind of uniqueness in there. There's a Bad Lieutenant song I think you did where you kind of halved the speed of it, and it just completely transformed that track to the point where I listen to that more than the original. And for me, your mix is the definitive version, because but it was still that great Barney Sumner song, but with that thing, it was just I was really, really impressed with that.
Yeah, and they did, and there was a great video for that as well. Did you see the animated,
yes,
the video, kind of like a Thunderbirdsy video?
Yes, yeah.
That was that they'd done a competition apparently for a video, and that came in second, and the guy was kind of like, and I saw it and I was like, I love that. Can I use that for my video, as a video for my version of the song? Yeah, and so that became the video for it, and I think that. Going back to making remixes, I try and use as many parts as I possibly can from the original song, and I'll take bits of the song and I'll snip it out and use that and loop that and stuff, and use as many parts as I possibly can, because I think that that's the essence of the song. That's what makes it what it is the bits that they played in the song in the original part. Played. But reimagined and reworked and remixed, because that's the bloody job, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not me taking a track that I've had in my file, resting there for about a year, not knowing what the hell I'm going to do with it, and just plonking a snippet of a vocal onto it. That's not a remix. That's just amazing.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the comments that I had read about your remixes kind of, get to that, like this is the best remix of it. And that the fact that you do kind of, how to walk the balance of that, where to add your personality into it and yet have the personality of the original track come through, because, people love that track for what it is. And so, having some of that there, and that's always, most, for most of my life, I listened to like pretty much along the blues, rock, metal spectrum. And so there wasn't much in the way of remixes. And as I expanded outwards, I started hearing remixes of other things. I'm like, wow, this just doesn't really do it for me. It's gone so far beyond what the track was or what the original artist intended. So I did really enjoy going through and comparing the originals and remixes, because you have very interesting takes on songs, and I like that.
Mm-hmm. When I was doing like something like a forest, for Blank and Jones, that we didn't have any parts, we only had the vocals, and it was like I had to kind of reimagine like what I wanted it to sound like. I wanted that to sound like mysterious and dark, and kind of because every remix he'd ever heard, every version he'd ever heard, was always kind of like similar to the original song. And I just thought I'll just take it in, I'll just half tempo it and make it really dark, and add loads of synthesizers and stuff, and I wanted it to have that kind of like, people say, oh, you sampled Susie and the Banshees. Well, we didn't sample Susie and the Banshees. I actually created that sound so people would imagine it was Susie and the Banshees.
Right.
It's not. It just has that feeling because of Robert's association with Susie. Because I met Robert Smith with Robbie's makeup in the 80s when he was going out with Susie, and went out with him and everything. And it was like, and I wanted to kind of have that little bit of a connection, just as a kind of like, my own personal comment, really. But the idea was I had to play everything. On that track, and I think that the fact that I actually do play guitar and bass and stuff, that actually helps me when I'm coming to do other guitar and bass based music, really, as well. Yeah.
You mentioned Blank and Jones, and you've done some work with there's an album out there with your work with them and all those remixes that you've just spoken about. Blank and Jones had a project a while back where they were given a bunch of the ZTT archive, Frankie and Art of Noise and Propaganda, and they did their kind of reinterpretations. They weren't necessarily remixes; they were just new mixes of that stuff. Is there a label or a band or a group of artists that you would love to do that to? If somebody said, you can pick any label or band and you can have all of the multi-tracks and you can create your own brand new mixes from the ground up, who would that be?
That is a question I honestly can't answer. I mean, like to think of like this, the amount of things that I'd love to get my hands on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Stephen Wilson's done a lot of things, and I'm like, you bastard, I'd love to have done that, But I think he does he does a really good job, actually.
He does.
I know how difficult it is. I know how difficult it is, and a lot of people give him stick and say, "Oh, it's not like that." But I think he does a magnificent job. And it's really hard. It's really hard what he does, and people don't really understand how hard.
No, he does. Like you say, he does get a lot of stick for. Certainly from the die-hard fans, but I know that he's got a wish list which includes the likes of Kate Bush. I think he's gone on record often saying he'd love to do a 5.1 mix of Hands of Love, which I would pay handsomely for.
I thought when they were recently releasing that, I thought they were going to do that as well. Yeah. I was really disappointed when it wasn't. I'm not buying that record. I've already gone.
No, well, it's one of those things. One day, I mean, he also I think he said he'd love to do Sign of the Times. Prince. He's a huge Prince fan as well. I mean, there are some records that would be fantastic in 5.1, given to somebody who knows what they're doing, such as yourself, Stephen Wilson. Elliot Shine is another one. But kind of going back to 5.1, you had that album. It was, a very successful album. I loved it. Is there plans for a sequel, or are you going to be doing anything else in 5.1?
Well, I'd love to do a 5.1, a 5.1 mix of everything that I do, but it's just the time. It's like like having the time to do it. Really, yeah. That's the only thing. It's the time. Maybe I will. I'm not saying we'll never do another one. I'm just saying we'll just see what maybe a Dolby Atmos one.
Oh yes, because that was going to be my next thing. Because now Apple Music are offering a lot of their stuff as Dolby Atmos. Will you be resubmitting 5.1 as an Apple Music album?
We'll see. We'll see. It's not up to me to say that.
No,
because like Werner, who runs Canon, he'll have to decide on whether he wants to do that.
Yeah, that would be amazing, because it is at last. I don't know about you, because we've spoken a lot about 5.1 stuff in the past. When Apple announced that, I thought at last this could be that moment, because there's been so many almosts. Each different format comes along, and it might catch. Oh no, it doesn't. Like Super Audio CD, when they included that in the PlayStation 3 system, and the first tranche of those consoles, I thought that's it. It'll do the same as PlayStation did for DVD or Blu-ray. It'll make it just commonplace, and then they took it off. And I thought Blu-ray would do it, and Blu-ray kind of suffered because everyone was downloading or streaming. Now that Apple are offering a pseudo 5.1 experience through a set of headphones, or the full 5.1 experience if you plug in, through a hi-fi, it might just stick this time. Fingers crossed, and that marketplace might open up for you.
Yeah, most people have never heard music in surround sound. They don't really know what it sounds like. To be honest. It's a completely immersive experience. I mean, it's not like people think it starts spilling around your head all the time, and it's not.
Yeah, there's like huge misconceptions, aren't there, around it?
How do you? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, how do you go about that? Like when you did your 5.1 album, is it like you visualize things where they would be in the room and you place them there like that, or is it more for an effect in certain parts? What's your?
Well, there's certain elements of the song that you can't move really, because they happen in front of you, and I look at it as like, how do you approach things when you are walking down the street? It's like you have every day you have surround sound all around you. Things are happening on the side, happening in the front, and behind you, and in the middle, and your main focus is kind of in the middle. So that's how I kind of like work it out. It's main focus in the middle, and then you have all the things, that embellishments and the little bits and things coming from the back and going to the front and stuff like that. And it kind of like, it has to be like a natural experience when you're listening to the song, you know, as if you were like if it was happening in front of you, really. And that's what it is, really. That's how I mix it. Yeah.
Because a lot of people think that it's akin to the cinema experience, where it's deliberately used to deliver motion, and you know, something's coming over the top or something's coming from left to right, and that action kind of sequence, and the center speaker is always tying dialogue to, you know, the center of the screen. But what I love about when 5.1 is done well is that it just kind of, it's like an exploded diagram of the performance. And now you can actually hear all the elements. And if you're in the middle of it all blends nicely, but you're still getting the clarity and detail, and you're hearing things that you maybe didn't hear in a stereo mix.
Yeah, and you find these details which make you go, wow, I didn't know that, actually, you know, what it was. Mixing is very different as well, you know, like and composing in that way is very difficult. As well, because you've got to imagine, where do you place the instrument, you know, how, you know, if you've got a track which has already previously been done, then you can't hide anything with 5.1. Everything's there in front of you. It's you know, whether it's in that on your left, right, or in the back, you know, it's all there, and there's no hiding anything. Whereas in a stereo mix, you can hide things, you know, you can blend stuff over and stuff, kind of like, just like it'll be hidden under some kind of reverb or something like that. And with 5.1, it's not, you can't do that. It's all crystal clear for you to hear every single element. And I think that's the beauty of listening to a track in 5.1, is that you hear all these different things, and it's like re-hearing your music new.
Yeah, absolutely.
Might suit my style of production, that, because it just tends to be like a ball of mush. So if I could have it like all 5.1, all that separation there.
Well, I did when we did the B movie soundtrack. Misha and I, we made all the tracks in 5.1, and we did, for example, Joy Division's Coma Kino. Yeah. We that was originally just a demo, right, which was released on a flexi disc. And the original flexi disc sounded like, you know, someone's like recorded it under bed sheets or something. And we took it and we took it apart and we reimagined it in 5.1. And I sent it to Bernard, and he was like, "Oh, I wish all our catalogue sounded like that." And I'd love to hear it all in 5.1. And I was thinking, that'd be a very, very interesting job. I mean, you know, to do a Joy Division in 5.1, I think. As equally as Einstürzen and Neubauten we did in 5.1, and to be honest, it sounded just as it's supposed to. I mean, for me, like Einstürzen and Neubauten in 5.1 just does it so much justice. Really. Yes, you know, it was like that. It was music which was made just to be in 5.1. Really.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I have to say I'm very privileged. I have an unofficial version of that 5.1 mix of Joy Division, which Mark very kindly did for me, and it's incredible. It really is really good indeed. Hey, any other questions?
I'm thinking, let's hit a few of the questions that we've collected up from the chat, because we want to make sure we get those in. I'll start off. So going back a bit, Synthatic asked, "Is a doc named B Movie after the band B Movie?"
No. B stands for Berlin.
Yeah, Berlin.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That's that one. Anything else?
Yeah, I got a couple more. I don't know what Ben has. So Sasquatch asked, "Did Mark speak German before he went to Berlin, or what was your?" And if I add to this a little bit, what was your cultural experience? You know, going and basically living in another country.
I didn't speak any German. I could say Hände hoch, which means Achtung. Yeah.
Everything you learned from the movies. Yeah,
that was about it. That's as far as I could. You know, Act 9. You know, that's all really. Yeah. And I just learned German by being in Germany, just wanting to learn. You know, like basic things like I want a beer or something. Like I thought, if I'm going to stay here, I need to learn the language, and so on. And so I did my best to speak German.
Very un-British of you, and I admire you for it. Cause
well, I told everyone in Germany, you don't speak to me in English. I want to learn your language, so you're going to have to speak to me in German, and I won't answer you if you speak to me in English. I was very determined, to get my head around. Yeah.
A follow-up question to that, which I think this is a great question. So David asked, let me move my notes over here. Do you think that it was the culture that made these bands successful, and how about versus now? So coming into a very culturally rich environment when all this, especially the early days when this was happening, how did that affect the music and its popularity?
Well, our location affected the music. Berlin being this island in the middle of nowhere and kind of like full of Germany's unwanted, to be honest. It was like it was this melting pot of creativity, and the music that we made was totally uncommercial in most of the cases. I mean, like, okay, we had Nina, 99 Red Balloons, but they were the exceptions. I mean, the people in our kind of avant-garde scene, if you want to call it that, we made very unconventional music, most of them. Me as the Unbekannten, we tried to make something else, but we were roped into this because we were crap, because we were roped into the not being able to play your instrument properly, sort of thing. But it was the environment that we were in was created this kind of sound, this kind of dystopian kind of like, well, we're all going to get killed in a nuclear holocaust next week, so we might as well just do whatever we want. Yeah. In comparison to people in the UK or in other countries like America or France or whatever Western countries, they maybe had a different agenda when they were making music. It was like, especially in the UK, it was like they made music to escape the monotony, or they wanted to make it big, become pop stars or whatever, and escape. Manchester, like me. In Germany, in Berlin, the people didn't need to escape because they'd already escaped to Berlin. So they just made music which was a form of expression, and it wasn't a commercial success at all by any chance. It was like, wasn't like Tony Wilson didn't know what to do with malaria, and he said, "How can I sell girls singing in jumpers and German, like to America? It's not going to happen." And so it wasn't like super commercial. It was only later on when people started to realise the value of this music and what it represented and meant. Then it became commercially successful, and someone like Gudrun Gut, who's like very, very successful in what she does. She's not compromised at all. She still does what she's always done, and Neubauten still do what they always have done. And there's no compromise, and that is the luxury that we have from that time today. And I think that a lot of people in the future could take note of that and say it's not. It's not just making like there's so much stuff out there like K-pop and hip hop and whatever. It's made for different reasons. The music, the music we made back then stood the test of time.
It's very evident when you watch the film of that very concentrated. Just the words are escaping me now, but it is a very focused, concentrated, and of its time. Completely uncommercial, completely just crazy, but in a way, because it was being made by those people in that place at that time, it just all made perfect sense, and it just seemed really exciting. It's one of those times I watched that film and I just wish I'd been born like 10 years earlier and been around to experience it properly, because I was too young.
I feel very privileged, to be honest.
Yeah, I bet.
I feel really privileged that I was made that decision to go to Berlin and stay there and get involved in this kind of just like new scene which was happening, and being there at the time, at the time you don't realise what was going on, you don't realise it at all. But looking back, then, with the fall of the wall and stuff like that, then you realise just, how privileged we were.
Yeah. Any other questions, guys?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to ask, what did you... You've had a good relationship with the Joy Division, New Order lads, like for a long time, I gather. What did you think when they kind of shifted from that more guitar-based sound and then came out with Blue Monday? What was your initial impression of that, seeing as that you was into, the electronic?
Well, that was partially the fact that Bernard, after Ian Curtis died, Bernard came to Berlin, and I took him down to the Metropole discotheque, and because we didn't have anything like that in Manchester, the Metropole, it was Europe's biggest gay disco actually, and it was a huge old theatre, and beautiful theatre, and it was really like Heaven is kind of like a smaller version of Metropole really in London, and that came up kind of like at a similar sort of time, but like in Manchester we had nothing like it, and I took Bernard to the Metropole so he could hear the kind of music that I was also listening to. I wasn't just listening to punk rock and new wave, I was listening to this kind of electronic disco music in this place, and it was just a big kind of eye opener. It was like, wow, we should be making music like this. And I thought that I was making tapes of like the music that I was listening to from the club, just to kind of inspire him and kind of like fuel his imagination. And when Kraftwerk's Computer World came out, I immediately bought him a copy, and Energy Equals MC Squared by Giorgio Moroder. I bought him a copy and sent it to him immediately. Like, this is electronic dance music. You should listen to it. And they were the things which kind of inspired him, and to make Blue Monday. And so when Blue Monday came out, I wasn't at all surprised. knew all the bits that they'd nicked. And one thing about Blue Monday that not a lot of people aren't aware of is that Blue Monday, the original 12-inch, everyone knows that the 12-inch cost a fortune and that nobody made any money out of the 12-inch. But what they don't understand is that the first kick drum at the start of the record is missing. You only hear the sound of the reverb of the first kick drum, and it's missing. And if you look at the UK pressing, it's like an etching in the middle of the run out of the record, which explains that they made a decision to keep it as it was because they didn't have the time to kind of go back to the studio and get the tape, the master tape, because they actually mastered it from a VHS.
Right.
Right.
And the beginning, the first beat kick drum was missing, and the German version was cut from a tape, so it's in its entirety. So the German 12-inch from 1983 has the original kind of whole kick, the whole thing, and only now the new version it was also taken from the master tape, so it's in its entirety with it. But if you've got an old 1983 version, you're missing the first kick drum.
I've got like 3 or 4 versions of the original 12-inch.
Go home now and listen to it.
I know. I'm going to dig them all out because I bought a copy when it sort of became a hit, and so that's probably. But as it's in my vinyl collecting mode, I've been lucky enough to find some really early pressings. The famous die cut pressings. With the silver inners and everything, and I'm going to definitely go and have a listen to that. Because also the other thing with Blue Monday is that part of the sequence is like 2 beats out or something, but it was one of those happy accidents that it just worked and they carried on with it. It was incredible.
I think the first version of Blue Monday was probably even better than the one that they actually released, because they had a mistake, didn't they, and they had to go back, and it was never the same.
No, and to see them do it live, like the famous Top of the Pops performance, is incredible. That's one of my favourite versions. It's just fantastic.
I've got a gear question, and I wanted to save it till later because the other questions were a lot more important in how you think about stuff, and that those were my primary concerns. But just kind of a random gear thing. So on your Die Unbekannten.
Yeah.
Pardon my pronunciation or lack thereof.
Yeah.
On that, like Don't Tell Me the Story album has a lot of flanger on it. Like a Bucket Brigade sounds like maybe a pedal or something. What kind of gear were you using at the time, and why was the flanger featured so prominently on those albums?
I just bought it like a new toy, and it had to be on everything. Yeah. We had all kinds. We had a SH9, I think it was, a Roland SH9, and we had a MS20, of course. And I had, I mean, with Don't Tell Me Stories, that was we played the Moog for that as well, and we'd been gifted a Roland 606 by Adrian Wright from the Human League, who'd been given it as a prototype to test for Roland. They asked him to test it, to set that up and get some feedback, and he was like, "I haven't got the time. Can test it and tell me what it's like?" So we took it home, programmed a drum beat, wrote the song basically that afternoon, and went into the studio and recorded it, and,
wow.
and that became Don't Tell Me. We only had one program because we didn't know how to program it properly. That's it. Now. Let's write something to it. Well, the flanger was just there because I just bought it and I thought it sounded great. And it had to be
well, and given the scarcity of gear. Going back and what you're talking about, how difficult it was to get gear in Berlin and just anywhere. It's not like it is today. That it does seem like we used to get the most out of our gear that we bought. Do you by chance remember which flanger it was?
I think it was an Ibanez actually.
An
Ibanez.
Yeah, they had some great. I remember they had one of the little yellow ones.
Yeah, yellow one. Yeah. I had a yellow one, and I had a later on. I had like a Yamaha one, and I had the Boss, the grey.
Like the BF1.
The big one. Yeah.
Yeah.
As a chorus, actually, it wasn't a flanger.
Oh yeah, the CE1. I've had a couple of those. Those are fantastic.
That was beautiful because it just gave the bass I still use it, so it gives the bass a certain feel that others don't really give.
Yeah.
So what is up and coming in the world of Mark Reeder? I mean, obviously, we've all been through this bloody pandemic and it's stifled a lot of things. But what's if everything carries on getting better as we hope it does, what can we see or hear coming from you?
Well, I hope that I'll be able to recommence my B-movie tours and the opportunity to be able to go around and show the film and when I DJ, I'm not a generic DJ. I don't just play some generic techno tracks or something. Yeah. I play only my own tracks.
Right.
So you get to hear my work as well as watch my film. Yeah. I hope that'll happen at some stage. I mean, I haven't given up hope there at all. I think that eventually we'll get to that point, and then people, the curiosity will hopefully have grown more, and more people will come and watch the film and listen to the music. I'm actually working on the new Stolen record.
Excellent.
Right now, whenever we'll be finished with that. I'm working also on some new tracks with Alan Chosnow because I did an album last year. We released Children of Nature with Alan Chosnow, which was a really interesting experience because he's such a lovely guy, and we met in Vilnius, and he said, "I'd like to make music like you." So I said, "Well, let's do something together," and it ended up being an album.
Excellent.
And I've just finished an album with Birmingham Electric, so we'll see where that takes us really. And then there's a lot of other things that are on the cards.
Excellent. Well, it's good that you've got a full diary coming up, so fingers crossed we'll get to see and hear more of that. Guys, have you got any other questions you want to throw at Mark's way? Or if there's anybody in the chat room who wants to throw a quick last question in before we round things off? That's silence there. No? Okay, brilliant. All right, well, look, Mark, we've overcome all the technical issues, and I'm so delighted that we did. No, thank you so much for trying and succeeding in coming back. That's fantastic.
First you don't succeed.
Indeed, absolutely. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you on and to hear your stories. If people want to go and look for the movie B-Movie, then I think the German version of Amazon is probably the best place to go. I don't know if there's any of the box sets left because they are a real treat. You get the soundtrack album, you get the film, you get some. There's a tote bag in there and some prints and a lovely book, and the vinyl. Yeah, and the vinyl. Yeah, and the book is written in German and English. So you have the German version and the English version, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, that was
yeah, I bet. So yeah, please try and get to watch the film any way you can. Of course, when Mark's out and about, please do seek him out because those events are really cool. There's one last question I've just seen here. What is your current favourite synthesizer or piece of gear that you really enjoy using right now?
It's always my 106.
Always a 106, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it'll always be that. I mean, I just had it renovated, so it's even now kind of one of my favourite, really. It's for some reason it just gives me everything that I want when I want it. And I never have difficulty in kind of imagining what it's going to do.
Yeah.
When I can faff around with it, it's great.
Brilliant stuff.
Hands on. It's not a plug-in.
Yeah. Mark's album Subversive Decadent is available on iTunes as a download. Any plans on that coming out in physical form?
Well, it'll be a triple album if it comes out as a vinyl. Yeah. And it's a question of costs, and it's a question of time, because pressing plants are backed up a year. So eventually, I mean, I'd like to release both, Children of Nature and Subversive Decadent as vinyls. Yeah. But it's just a question of time, really, and a question of money.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is crazy the delays in the vinyl pressing industry at the moment. It's just gone bonkers. But yeah, fingers crossed. You'll have an order here, that's for sure. So that album is out on. So you can search that out on iTunes, and of course
it's on Bandcamp.
On Bandcamp as well, of course.
On iTunes, I think I don't. Well, maybe on iTunes. I don't know about iTunes. I've not looked, but I know that if you're on Spotify, you don't actually get the full album. You only get to hear sort of like 90%, because you're not getting New Order as a stream.
Oh, of course, yeah.
New Order version of New Order's "Be a Rebel," which is different to the single, which comes out in a couple of weeks. It's a different mix that was released on the vinyl, and you don't get yellow.
Right, and is that just licensing?
They didn't want to give us streaming, and to be honest, I didn't really want it, because I just wanted to put it on Bandcamp.
Yeah.
And on Bandcamp, you get the full yellow mix as opposed to the yellow version, which appears in the yellow box set, CD box set, which is a 5-minute version, and then on Subversive Decadent Bandcamp version, it's an 8-minute version, but the full version.
So is that on markreeder.bandcamp.com? Is that the site, or is it on an MFS branded one?
No, it's not. I don't have a label Bandcamp. I just read it at Bandcamp.
All right, excellent. Yeah. So go to Bandcamp if you want to grab that, and I guess you get a better cut of the sales as well from Bandcamp, I would imagine.
Oh yeah, and the sound actually sounds better
because it's high quality.
The sounds it's very high quality. It's Bandcamp.
Absolutely. Brilliant. If you haven't heard any of Mark's releases, then please do go and seek out that. Go and get 5.1. It's a cracking album in stereo or 5.1. Either version is really, really good. There's some great mixes of some classic electronic tracks. The John Foxx, Depeche Mode, Sam Taylor Wood and the Pet Shop Boys, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. It's fantastic. Mark, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope everything goes well over there in Germany, and we'll have to get you back on some point soon. Next time when the Stolen album is coming, or you've got something new, let us know, and we'll have you back on.
Yeah,
thank you.
Definitely.
Brilliant, guys. Okay. Chris, how is the pooch? Because she's not very well. Or is it she? I can't remember now.
Yeah, she is Sola, and I just want to thank everybody in the chat, Andy and Bert and Andrew and Kent. And everybody that was commenting on her, I only had one hand free, so it wasn't typing or responding to stuff. So I figured I'd do it at the end, so I wasn't interrupting things. But yeah, she's an older dog. We got her as a rescue, and we've had her for 7 years. But small dogs like this have a lot of problems,
right.
And so liver and kidney, and she's got some lumps on her belly that we're looking at. So. I think she'll be okay. Where she gets all the help that she needs to get from the vet and all that. So good. She just wasn't feeling good today. Yeah. So those times I like to hold her and try to make things work with her in my lap.
Indeed. Well, I hope she feels better soon.
Thank you.
I hope you have a great weekend. Sorry.
I thought it was very endearing that you had your dog with you.
Yeah, he's a lovely guy, is our Chris. Ben, you've got a gig this weekend?
Yeah, there is one. It's a festival.
Come on, plug it.
Well, I can't remember where it is.
Playing at a festival. It's in the field somewhere.
Yeah, it's a festival. I think it's at Berryway or somewhere like that. I'll find out. I'll
Manchester, yeah.
Yeah. And then next week, it's in Warrington next week, so I don't have to go very far at all.
Home gig.
So I like them ones. That's providing I don't get the dreaded vid.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah.
That.
I'm going to have a couple of tests.
Indeed. Yeah, well, love to Vicky. Hope she's feeling better, and I hope you don't come down with it. Hope Chris's dog feels better soon, and I hope you have a great weekend. You stay safe. Mark, once again, thank you for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, thank you very much.
We need to hook up again. We'll sort something out at some point, I'm sure. And thanks to everyone in the chat room. As Cryss said, your comments, your support is always appreciated. Just before we go, just to let you know who we've got coming up over the next few weeks. I always like to remind people so that you can set your alarm clocks. Hit that subscribe button and the bell, of course, to make sure you get notifications. So next week we are going to be joined, and I'm sorry, Kent, I'm going to put this anemic picture of you back up again. We've got Kent Spong coming along. So obviously we all know Kent. Kent is synth restorer and repairer to the rich and famous and the stars, and also the not so rich and famous and not so stellar. But Kent's going to be doing his first of his monthly appearances on the show. So if you have any questions for Kent in terms of synth restoration or repair or anything that you want to ask him, please let us know and join the show, and we'll have a blast with him. So that's next week. The week after, we are hoping to have another member of synth supergroup Node, Mr. Mel Wesson, who also does a lot of work with Hans Zimmer. He's going to be joining us hopefully on the 27th. That's still TBC. Hopefully that will happen. Following week, we've got David Arnold, the composer, who's done some amazing work with James Bond and Dracula and so on. So he's on September 3rd. September 10th, are we still on with Mick for September 10th, Ben?
Yes.
So Mick McNeil, ex of Simple Minds, is going to be joining us again. So that's going to be a laugh, and hopefully we'll have a much better connection than we did the last time. And then Kent, obviously, again. End of September, we're going to be joined by the legend that is Martin Ware. Martin is currently going out again on the road with Heaven 17. He's been playing a few festivals, which is good to see because they've been off the road as everybody else has for such a long while. But of course, during that downtime, he started his own podcast series, Electronically Yours, which has had some incredible guests on there. So we're going to be hopefully stealing his Rolodex and adding it to ours over at some point soon. And then we've got Ken Flux Pierce in October. We've got Axel Hartmann, synth designer supreme. But also in October, we are going to be joined by the legend that is Steve Porcaro from Toto. That is on October 8th. So put that one in your diary because that's going to be an absolute doozy of a show. We're getting more and more guests as we go along, so please join us in the Facebook groups, the Twitter and the Instagram feeds and all of that stuff, and make sure you hit subscribe on the channel and hit those like buttons. And we will see you same time, same place next week with our very special friend Kent. And from all of us here, have a great weekend, have a safe weekend, stay healthy, take the greatest of care. Bye.